Okay.
There we go. We are ready to go.
Ready to roll.
Yep. I'm not hearing any echoes, so that means I have everything muted that should be muted. All right. Hello and welcome to episode 44 of the Hockey Nuts podcast. My name is Wayne. I'm here with Steve. Oh, no. We got to restart.
Ready to roll.
I'm getting an echo. I'm not hearing any echoes, so that means I have everything muted that should be muted. Let me look. See what's running. Where am I getting sound from? Right. Hello and welcome to episode 44 of the Hockey Nuts. There it is. All right. I found it. Let's start up again. All right. Hello and welcome to episode 44 of the Hockey Nuts podcast. My name is Wayne. I'm here with Steve. How's it going today, Steve?
Going great, Wayne. Good to be with you and talk. We had a team hoist the cup.
We did.
So I'm kind of excited to talk to you tonight about that and get through. We've got a lot to talk about.
We certainly do. We're heading into the off season now. So with the Stanley Cup being awarded, the season is officially over. So we've got to talk about the last two games of that series, of course. We'll talk about that. The Calder Cup was actually awarded, and it actually happened last night. We're recording on Wednesday, and it actually happened late last night. I was actually up when it happened, so I saw all the tweets and everything come through for that. So we got to talk about the American Hockey League, which is now over. And, of course, now that we're heading into the off season, we're heading into the season that I like to call silly season, which is when we get to watch some teams take advantage of other teams and where some of the general managers just make silly decisions with their lineups. And hopefully our teams aren't one of them.
Gosh, I'm hoping so.
So we've got to talk about silly season. So, and the expansion draft is the very next thing that's up on the docket. So we're going to be very heavy on the expansion draft with the episode tonight. And then lastly, just as a reminder to everyone, this will actually be our last show until the 27th, or it's the last show that both Steve and I are going to be on. I may pop on and do some shortened ones on a solo, but Steve and I have gone over our schedules, and we've basically decided or determined that we can't get together between now and the 27th because of you've got a vacation coming up, I've got a vacation coming up, and with everything else, we're going to be very, very, very busy in our personal lives. So,
right.
So the next scheduled podcast will be on the 27th. If you want to watch the live stream, and we'll probably end up doing that fairly early in the day, but we'll get an actual time out for those that do want to watch us live. So let's get right into the hockey business tonight because there's so much to talk about. So, and the first thing we got to talk about is Game 6 and Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final between the Penguins and the Predators. And
yes.
Just to remind everybody, as we finished last week's episode, it was 3-2 Pittsburgh. I'm sorry, it was 2-2 coming out of the last episode. So
right.
5 and 6 are the two games that we got to talk about. There was no Game 7. I wish there was a Game 7, but there didn't end up having to be. So let's first start and talk about Game 5, which actually to me was a very forgettable game.
It was. It was a shellacking.
Yeah, it was definitely a shellacking. Pittsburgh ended up winning that game 6-0. In fact, the once they got up, what was it, 4-0 or so? I pretty much lost interest once it went 4-0, and I almost tuned out the game completely. I had it on, but I started working on other things, so I had my working on other things on my computer and had the game on up there, but I wasn't really closely paying attention to it.
Yeah.
But that game, essentially, the way it went was Pittsburgh jumped out to a 3-0 lead after one. And then after two, it ended up being a 6-0 lead. And in the third period, Pittsburgh let off the gas a little bit, and there were no goals in the third period. But just it just seemed like Nashville just came in just completely. I don't know if they were unprepared is the right word, but they just, I don't know. I guess they weren't ready for the energy that Pittsburgh had and the energy of the Pittsburgh crowd.
Yeah, I saw that as the veteran Stanley Cup champion Pittsburgh Penguins coming out on the ice with
Yep.
all of their experience,
Yep.
all of their collective, athleticism and will, and they just came out on the ice and systematically shut down the Nashville Predators, and they never had a chance. That game was Pittsburgh definitely stepping up a notch, and Nashville not wanting to match them and not being able to match them. And that happens. We talked about it a couple podcasts ago when you talked about the Boston Bruins in the Stanley Cup Finals when they beat the Vancouver Canucks. Boston upped the ante physically on the Canucks.
Yep.
And Vancouver couldn't match that. They couldn't come back from that.
Yep.
And that's definitely what happened, I think, in Game 5. It was over with in the first period. And it was, as I said, the experience-laden team that's won those Stanley Cups. And it was something to watch, but that game, which was a pivotal game, you and I talked about it.
Yep.
Decided the Stanley Cup, really.
We even went out there and said that the winner of Game 5 was going to end up winning the cup, and we were saying it during Game 1 and right after Game 1 and Game 2. I know I was saying it, and you kind of agreed with me that there were a lot of similarities with this series versus the 2011 Bruins Vancouver series. And in fact, some of the members of the press watching the game were actually bringing up the same thing later on. After Game 4, they were bringing up the same thing, how similar this series was to that 2011 series. But Game 6 and 7 didn't go the way that the 2011 series went. It, in fact, went the other way. Because in 2011, Boston came out and won Game Vancouver came out and won Game 5, but Boston won Game 6 and 7, whereas Nashville lost Game 6 and the series. So, this game just was an overall disappointment. They ended up yanking Pekka Rinne again for the second time, and it was just one of those nights where Nashville just wasn't there. They just didn't have, and you can't put all the blame on Nashville. Pittsburgh came out just, like you said, the experience and the will to win was a big part of that game. So
Wayne, I started to see it, but I definitely saw it in Game 6. But I just didn't see anybody on the ice for Nashville that was going to score. Just their offense just didn't have somebody. It's like we saw them throughout the entire playoffs, able to score, able to defend, but able to put the puck in the back of the net. And then they get to Game 5 in the Stanley Cup, and I just didn't see that person anymore. They didn't have, Forsberg. I don't know. You can go down the list. Shea Weber. Shea Weber. PK Subban. None of the defensemen were there that could score for Nashville.
Yep.
And it just didn't seem like they had any offensive presence whatsoever. I don't know if you felt that way, but sometimes, you can look at a team and you can say, well, gosh, they're not scoring right now, but they will. They're doing well. They're getting the puck to the net. They're creating. They're cycling the puck. But I just didn't see that, and I guess that was part of it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's just Brian Johansson being out was a big part. I mean, they've been able to kind of Band-Aid stitch the offense together without Johansson, but his absence was very evident in this game.
Right.
The fact that Nashville didn't score any goals in Game 5, of course, giving up 6 wasn't going to help them either. But
right.
Having no offense was definitely a major issue for them, for sure. But as as much of a blowout that game was, I lost interest in it after that because you and I were both rooting for Nashville. So once Pittsburgh jumped way out to that lead, I lost interest. Didn't want to watch that game anymore, and knew it was gonna, the outcome was decided pretty early in that game. So let's talk about Game 6.
Right.
It's quite a bit to talk about there, and they're still talking about it even today, several days after the end of that game. Game 6 ends up being the deciding game. The final score was 2-0, but the game was scoreless all the way up until about, a minute and a half or so left in the game. But the big story coming out of that game, or there were a couple of big stories coming out of that game, first and foremost was the goal that was disallowed that Nashville scored.
Right.
Because the referee lost sight of the puck and blew the whistle, and the puck never really was tied up.
Right.
But the puck fell out of the goalie because the goalie looked like he kind of had it and froze, but the puck fell off his pad and onto the ice, and Nashville came in and popped it in the net. But by then, the referee had blown his whistle, stopping play for the cover up, and of course that play is not reviewable. They can't go back and change it. And once he blows his whistle, or actually the way it's almost written in the book is once he decides to blow his whistle,
right.
at that point the play is dead.
Right.
And it was a very quick whistle, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Almost too quick, but the puck falls out of his pads. Referee doesn't see it fall out, blows the whistle, waves the play off. Clear goal for Nashville, and the goal is disallowed because he blew his whistle. So that was definitely a play that foretold the outcome of that game. When I saw that play, I'm like, I can see where this is going.
Yeah. You can see where it's going. They're not going to get a chance to score again, perhaps, and it's going to come right on down to the end, and then lady luck.
Yeah.
But they reviewed that play several times, many times, on NBC. They reviewed it a bunch.
Yep.
And I think that I can't recall, but if I'm not mistaken, they agreed with the call on the ice that the intent to blow the whistle was there. But in looking back at that play myself, I thought it was a goal. My opinion. But I really, I thought it was a goal. I thought Nashville had scored.
Yep.
I saw the replay, and perhaps, I'm missing on the timing. It was close, but I thought it was a goal.
Yep. Yeah, and again, it comes down to the way the rule is worded. Is that once the referee determines that he's blowing the whistle. So essentially, once he decides in his head that he's going to blow the whistle, at that moment that he decides, it's not when the whistle actually blows. It's at the moment that he decides he's going to blow the whistle is when the play officially is dead. And apparently he decided to blow his whistle probably as soon as the goalie caught the puck.
Right.
Just before the puck fell out. is when the referee decided to blow his whistle. But I did see a tweet from Paul Stewart, and those of you who've been fans of the game for a long, long time know exactly who Paul Stewart is. He refereed in the end. I don't know if Steve, if you know who Paul Stewart is, but
I don't, and I feel I do not know.
He refereed for years and years and years in the NHL. Retired probably 10 years ago or so. He refereed a lot when I was growing up, so I remember him. And of course, he's originally from the Boston area, so he did a lot of Bruins games in years past. But he was also an NHL player. He's one of the few people that actually made it all the way to the NHL as a player. Wasn't a very good player. He only played a few seasons, and then, decided to turn into a referee, and then refereed for a long time. And so I follow him on Twitter anyway, and he tweeted out that the referee was out of position on that play. Or I don't remember the exact wording of the tweet, but it was something to the effect of he was criticizing the NHL for coaching the referees to be in that spot where that referee was, rather than because the referee was pretty much, if I remember right, he was either at the goal line or just below the goal line. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I
remember he had to skate a good distance.
Yeah.
When I say a good distance, 15 feet.
Yeah.
20 feet to the front of the net.
Yeah. In a nutshell, he basically said that, the referee, in his opinion, was out of position, and but the NHL coaches them to be there, and it just doesn't create a good sight line for seeing that possibility of the puck popping out the other side of the goalie, because the goalie is essentially blocking their view of the puck. Right. So yeah, he was expressing his disappointment in that play, that he felt that if the referee would have been in a better spot, he wouldn't have blown the whistle, and the goal would have counted. And we're talking about a different game if that goal counts, because now you've got Nashville, who's up 1-0. Then Pittsburgh's got to press to try to score. Who knows what could have happened.
Well, again, once that goal was denied, I looked on the ice. I was like, I just don't see it again. I don't see Nashville mustering up the offensive force to get a goal here. Yeah. I don't see it develop. It just like that disallowed goal really hurt Nashville. It really did. It hurt the crowd. It hurt the team. Was it the right call? I don't know. It was close.
Yeah.
But Pittsburgh had their ducks in a row. They could have scored. They seemed to really be pressing the issue as far as scoring a goal, although they didn't.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, I believe it was the right call in terms of how the rules are written right now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I feel that the rules should be changed, and that a case like that should be reviewable, and they should, if it's obvious that the puck was never covered, whether or not the referee blows the whistle, they should go ahead and allow a goal like that in that particular case. And they would need to rewrite the rules in order to allow for a situation like that. I don't know how they would exactly rewrite it, but that's something I'm sure they'll visit in the next GM meetings for sure. I'm sure Nashville's GM will be right in there pushing for some sort of a change that in that sense. But yeah. Anyway, so the game remains scoreless all the way to the end of the third period, with 1:35 left in the third. Pittsburgh scores a goal, and in my opinion, was a controversial goal as well.
Yeah.
To go up 1-0, and then of course they scored the empty netter to make it 2-0, sealing the win. And the reason I felt that the go-ahead goal was controversial was there was contact made with Hornquist and Pecorine. If you see
Yes.
the replay, particularly the replay from either inside the net or from behind the net, you see Rene, the player, Rene's reaching out with his glove, and then you see the player hit his arm. The glove hand comes back almost into the net, and then he's trying to bring the glove back out, and that's when the puck goes in either just over or just under his glove and into the net.
Right.
So there was enough contact there that prevented him from being able to play the puck with his glove hand, and there was enough contact there that I felt that the goal should have been negated. And they reviewed it. They decided to keep it, and I've been telling people all week that I've been talking to about it. Say, look, there was contact there, and I remember at least one, maybe even two goals in the Boston-Ottawa series where Boston had goals taken away when there was less contact made with the goaltender than in this case.
I agree with you.
And in this case, the goal was allowed. So, I just don't get it.
Yeah, I thought there was contact too, and if you look at the replay, it's neither here nor there now. But I thought that was goaltender interference, and I don't know. I feel like I'm different than you in that the first goal should have counted. But I'm the same with you in that the second goal should have been disallowed. The Pittsburgh goal should have been disallowed.
Yep.
Would Pittsburgh have scored again had Nashville had that goal allowed? It's too. You don't know.
Well, the game probably would have gone to overtime if they would have disallowed that second goal or that Pittsburgh goal. At that point in the game, with it still scoreless, we'd been looking at an overtime game. Mm-hmm. And then at that point, you never know what's going to happen.
There's no telling what'll happen. I can tell you this. There seemed to be a frantic effort by Pittsburgh. Didn't you feel that? I felt like Pittsburgh was very frantic.
Yep.
And Wayne, they didn't want that series, I don't feel, as vaunted as they are, as experienced as they are with all of the trophies and the awards going to Malkin and Fleury and Crosby and et cetera over the years, they didn't want that series going to Game 7. They just didn't. Even though it's in Pittsburgh, they didn't want that series going to Game 7 because, as you know, you followed hockey all these, anything can happen in Game 7.
Sure
and
can.
I don't, even if it's the Pittsburgh Penguins on the ice,
Yep.
I wouldn't,
Yep.
So that's just looking back at it. That's my feeling. They really tried to get the goal. Yep. And going to overtime in Nashville, that would have been difficult. Would they have won the game? It's all speculation, but I just feel like they really tried very, very hard there in the last few minutes of that game to get a goal. They really did.
Yep, they certainly did. So that's how the series ends. Pittsburgh wins the series in 6, takes the Stanley Cup home. Sidney Crosby wins the Conn Smythe Trophy, and he's the third player to win back-to-back Conn Smythe trophies. Bernie Parent in 74-75 and Mario Lemieux in 91-92 were the other two. Just curious on your thoughts on whether or not Crosby deserved the Conn Smythe.
I thought Evgeny Malkin did, but if Evgeny Malkin wasn't going to get it, Sidney Crosby. Only from a stats standpoint, I thought Malkin deserved it. But they may have battled it over. It was one of those two guys deserved it.
Yeah. Well,
Jake Gensel. If it wasn't for Sidney Crosby, Jake Gensel was a non-factor. He wouldn't have had nearly the Stanley Cup playoffs that he had, and he had a great play. He played great, but a lot of that was due to Sidney Crosby.
Yeah, he played on a line with Sidney Crosby. And I think what ultimately won it for Sidney Crosby was the fact that, it was more than just stats with Crosby. It was
Leadership.
whenever he was on the ice, he was clearly the best player on the ice.
Right.
The whole series.
You're right.
And
I agree with you.
so I definitely felt that Crosby deserved this particular Conn Smythe. Last year, I don't know. There were players that I think played better than Crosby last year, but we won't talk about last year. That's last year. But this year, definitely, I felt Crosby was the guy. Had Nashville won the Stanley Cup, who knows who we would have picked on that? Probably Pekka Rinne.
I don't think there's any doubt. Pekka Rinne would have won it.
Yeah.
I really, even though he had some bad games, I think Pekka Rinne would have won the Conn Smythe. Yeah.
So, and he did have some bad games. And I think ultimately what cost Nashville in this particular series was their poor play in Pittsburgh. Yes, you can blame the refs, and there was the goal in Game 1 that cost Nashville. There was the controversial goals in Game 6 that cost Nashville, but ultimately their play in Pittsburgh, Game 2 and Game 6 or Game 5 specifically, really, really cost Nashville the series.
I couldn't have said it any better. That's a very, very, very good point. I agree with you 100%. I think Nashville got a lot of experience, needed experience for that team, and they're going to watch out for them next year. You know.
Yep, they're going to be good.
And they got a lot of cap room.
They got cap room, so they can bring back their restricted free agents. They might even be able to go out and get an unrestricted free agent. They might have enough cap room for that. Time will tell on that. But bottom line is they're not in the situation like a Chicago where Chicago is in big trouble right now. Up against it. In fact, they're over the cap. I think I saw an article. They're committed to $77 million for next year.
Yeah.
The cap is currently 73, and the talk around the league is it's either going to remain flat or only go up $1 million or $2 million. Yeah. So Chicago is going to be losing some quality players this summer.
Somebody's gone.
Yep.
And I looked
probably
at the list.
More than one.
It might be Marian. They may say, "Hey, Marian Hossa, we're not going to protect you."
Yep.
That's the guy I see. He's pulling in what, $5-6 million.
Yep. Well, I'm seeing a lot of talk about Kruger too.
Marcus Kruger.
Yep.
I agree. He was another guy. We're going to talk about this in a little bit, Wayne.
Yep.
I had a great time studying for this podcast, picking guys again. That mock draft. Oh man, what a great thing, man.
Yep.
So. Anyway.
So anyway, all right. So that wraps up the Stanley Cup Final. Congratulations to the Pittsburgh Penguins and their fans.
Congratulations
for winning the Stanley Cup this year, and congratulations for Nashville for doing as well as they have. Their team and their fans really showed how hockey can do in a quote unquote non-traditional market. So,
right.
So they had a terrific season themselves. All right, well, let's move on to other news going on around the league. First and foremost, we got to talk about some transactions. There's been a few already. Most of these are just re-signs and coaches, that kind of stuff. Bob Boner was named coach of the Florida Panthers on Monday. He is taking over for Peter DeBoer, and that means there is still only one team left without a coach, and that is the Buffalo Sabres.
That's correct.
I don't know how much you want to talk about Bob Boner. I know he was a player back in the day.
Well, he was assistant with San Jose, right?
Yes, he was.
And he was on their short list. They really wanted him.
Yep. It's his first head coaching job.
Right.
Wow, Florida's had 15 coaches already. They're saying I'm looking at the article. He's the 15th coach in Panthers history.
Wow.
Oof. That's not going to. I think the Bruins might have had 15 coaches in their history.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a former NHL defenseman. He only had 72 points in
Right.
630 games during 10 seasons in the NHL as a defenseman. He retired in 2006.
Right.
He replaces Tom Rowe. Rowe finished the season as coach after Jared Gallant was fired on November 27th. So he's the third coach in less than a year. So,
Right. And you know, listen, he's inheriting a team. You and I both know it. They've managed to make it these last few years, but last couple 2 or 3 years, but they have been in terrible, terrible times too. Um, it's not just about the hockey team. If you're going to coach in Florida,
yeah.
it's about a lot more than that.
Yep.
You have got to keep the fans in the arena,
Yep.
and so he takes over a very difficult position.
And that arena is not exactly in the best location either. Sunrise, Florida is way out of the way of both. It's way out of the way of Miami, and pretty far out of the way for Fort Lauderdale. So, my wife and I took a cruise a few years back, and we sailed out of Fort Lauderdale, the cruise port there, and we drove down. So we got a sense of the area, and we actually drove down, and we were looking for a cheap hotel. We ended up staying out in Sunrise, and you could see the arena from our hotel.
Oh, wow.
We were that close to it. So I've got a personal experience, kind of a sense for the lay of the land down there. And yeah, Sunrise, Florida is not. It's not like a downtown arena like some of these other cities have.
Right.
Sunrise is kind of out of the way. It's out in the burbs, and it's just not a great location. And like you said, getting butts in the seats is a big focus for that team.
And again, Florida took their time. Bob Bogner was the guy that they had ultimately decided on, and so you kind of got to think that they must have really put him in the hot seat, I'm sure, to see how he responded, I guess.
Yeah.
And he must have passed.
Yep.
So the only thing I can say is they did more than one interview, I believe, with this guy. And
they're saying 15 candidates.
Yeah. This was an extensive thing.
Yeah, they interviewed 15 candidates and talked to about 6 other candidates. And they were talking to NHL coaches, assistant coaches, junior coaches, college coaches. They were the candidates ran the gamut of all sorts of experience.
Mm-hmm.
I did see somewhere where he wanted somebody, quote unquote, new. They didn't want a recycled coach.
Right.
They wanted somebody who was a little different than the rest.
Right. So. Must be too that the players liked him. I'm sure that factored in with the amount of time that it took for them to decide on a coach.
Yep.
I think that they took that into consideration strongly.
Yep.
But again, it's about more than just the hockey team. And with this particular team,
yep,
there's a lot going on.
Agreed.
And that's how it is. So,
yep.
Good luck to him.
Yep.
That'll be a test for sure.
It should be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So. All right, let's move on. Goalie Jonas Korpisalo signed a 2-year contract with the Columbus Blue Jackets on Friday. Financial terms of the contract were not released, but the Columbus Dispatch reported that Korpisalo will make $700,000 in 2017-18 and $1.1 million in 2018-19 for an average annual value of $900,000. He could have become a restricted free agent July 1. He was Sergei Bobrovsky's backup this season, and he was 7-5-1 with a 2.88 goals against average and .905 save percentage in 14 games. So he had light work behind Bobrovsky, but a good cheap backup for them, and and the contract is what they would call it a bridge contract in this case. At least that's what it looks like to me. He was third-round draft pick of the 2012 NHL draft.
Mm-hmm.
So Korpisalo is actually going to be exposed to the Vegas Golden Knights in the NHL expansion draft because of Bobrovsky having his no-trade clause. So interesting signing there.
Yeah. I don't think that's going to matter. I do not think that the Vegas Golden Knights are going to attempt to go after Jonas Korpisalo.
No. There are much better goaltenders available in the draft. All right, Tyler Toffoli and the LA Kings have agreed to terms on a 3-year, $13.8 million contract, which averages out to $4.6 million a year. Toffoli could have become a restricted free agent on July 1st. The 25-year-old forward had 34 points in 63 games last season. He missed 19 games with a lower body injury and had minor surgery on his left knee after the season. His 31 goals in 2015-16 were an NHL career high and led the Kings. He had 14 points in 26 games in the 2014 Stanley Cup playoffs to help the Kings win the Cup. In 293 NHL games, he has 175 points, which is 84 goals, 91 assists. And he was a second-round draft pick in the 2010 NHL draft. So he's definitely one of their top 6 forwards. So they were able to get him signed. All right, the Philadelphia Flyers have signed defenseman Shane Gostisbehere to a $27 million 6-year contract extension. The 24-year-old Gostisbehere had 7 goals and 39 points in 76 games this season, which was a drop-off from his rookie season that saw him basically became a fan favorite in Philadelphia. His salary cap hit will be $4.5 million per year, and he'll earn $6 million in salary each of the first 2 years of the deal, and then the third year will be a 5.5, and the last 2 years will be 3.25 per year.
Excellent. He's a great player.
Yep.
And I don't speak too highly of many Flyers players ever, but Shane Gostisbehere is a great player. Excellent defenseman, and he's worth every penny of what they're paying him. He barring injuries and stuff, he'll be around a long time. He's very, very good. And Union College got the second one, Mark Vecchione.
Yep.
Or Mike Vecchione. So they have 2 Union College boys on that team now. Both of them won the national championship.
Yep. Well, they were both major parts of that national championship, too.
Yep.
So, yep. Congratulations to the Ghost, as they call him there in Philly. All right. The Nashville Predators signed defenseman Yannick Weber to a 1-year, $650,000 contract on Tuesday. The 28-year-old is coming off his first season with the Preds after spending the previous 3 with the Canucks. He played a career-high 73 games, recording 1 goal and 7 assists during the postseason. Weber served on the team's third defense pairing alongside Matt Irwin. In 22 games, he collected 1 assist while averaging 11:09 of ice time. Weber was set to become an unrestricted free agent on July 1. This one looks to me as this is a player that they want to serve up to Vegas.
Right. Very good way of putting it.
They needed to have a defenseman that they could put up that they needed to have a defenseman that is signed through next year, and they went ahead and did that. So,
right.
So Yannick Weber will be available for Vegas to pick up. Will they get him? Who knows? Time will tell.
Right.
All right. Winnipeg Jets have agreed to a 1-year, one-way contract with forward Marco Dano worth $850,000 on Tuesday. Originally a first-round draft pick of the Blue Jackets in 2013, Dano was traded to the Jets in the deal that sent Andrew Ladd, Matt Frazier, and Jay Harrison to the Chicago Blackhawks in 2016. Dano appeared in 38 games for Winnipeg last season, scoring 4 goals and 11 assists. The native of Austria missed 26 games in the middle of the season due to a lower body injury. For his career, he has registered 42 points in 107 games. That's kind of weak numbers for a first-round draft pick, if you ask me. But
right, I agree.
And having a one-year contract, $850, that's definitely a bridge deal.
Right.
So we'll see. All right. Did you have any other transactions that don't apply to? Because I've got some more later on when we talk about the expansion draft. But
no. I think we'll talk about. You and I have talked about a couple of them.
Yep.
And I think we'll talk about them later, right?
Yeah, as part of the expansion draft coverage. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's move on to injuries. Defenseman Erik Karlsson could miss the start of next season for Ottawa Senators after having successful foot surgery on Wednesday. That's today. Erik underwent surgery earlier today in Charlotte, North Carolina. Hey, he was only a couple hours away from us.
In Charlotte?
Yeah, in Charlotte, North Carolina, to repair torn tendons in his left foot. General Manager Pierre Dorion told the Senators' website. The tears, which occurred during this year's Stanley Cup playoffs, were found during an MRI as part of an extensive medical evaluation following the season. The recovery from this surgery is expected to take approximately 4 months. His timeline leaves us hopeful that Erik will be fully recovered and healthy to start the 2017-18 regular season. Karlsson, who's 27, led Ottawa with 18 points in the playoffs, helping the Senators reach the Eastern Conference Final, where they were eliminated in 7 games by the eventual Stanley Cup champion Penguins. And he had 71 points in 77 games in the regular season, and he's a finalist for the Norris Trophy. So we should jump in the car and go down and meet him for dinner or something.
Yeah. I'm going to pack my brass knuckles and tell him if he ever beats the New York Rangers again. I'll show him the brass knuckles this time.
Because he's only a couple hours from us right now.
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you're not. All right. So in terms of other stories that have come around, we've got the draft order has now been finalized, and I've got a link in the show notes for that. Obviously, the Pittsburgh Penguins will have the 31st pick in the draft, and the Nashville Predators will have pick number 30. And, of course, if you want to see that draft order, there's links all over the place. But there is a link in the show notes that you can click on to see exactly where your team stands. So,
right.
And as a reminder, New Jersey holds the number 1 pick this year. So, all right. The Calgary Flames will move if they don't get a new arena. Flames president of hockey operations Brian Burke said last Wednesday. We're not going to make the threat to leave. We'll just leave, Burke told a season ticket holder at a business luncheon at the Canadian Club of Calgary. According to the Calgary Sun, we still have a building that opened in 1983, the oldest in the league by more than 10 years, he said.
Yeah.
I think he's wrong on that one, but anyway. Burke refused to take questions from the media after the event. Flames president and CEO Ken King issued a response to Burke's comments. Brian Burke runs hockey operations for the Calgary Flames, and he and many Calgarians have strong views about this topic. However, he's not our spokesperson regarding a new events center for our city. We remain committed to our dialogue with the city and very optimistic we will get to a positive conclusion. We admire everyone's enthusiasm on this subject. All right, so he's either getting he either got in trouble for saying this, or he was told to say this, one way or the other.
Yeah,
I think it's one or the other.
Well, let me just I want to, and I'm going to say it was 2, maybe 3 years ago. There were terrible floods in Calgary. Mm-hmm. Horrible floods. Yep. Wiped out the city, and those floods literally went up in the first lower bowl of the Saddle Dome.
It was like 8 rows up.
8 or 10 rows up. Wiped out all the communications. They had to put in everything. And I don't care who you are. I don't care. when that happens, the risk of mold, the
Yep.
problems, I mean, you can imagine. It was probably a major expense just to get the ice back.
Yep.
But that arena is not if you think about it, that alone, the damage caused by that has got to be lasting.
Oh,
Even
they're
if
probably still working on issues that keep cropping up.
right. I mean, it was major, major damage. I remember them saying it. In fact, the whole lower arena was destroyed. It was
Yeah.
literally gutted.
Yep.
So that can't get out of people's minds. I'm sure Brian Burke has it right in the forefront of his mind.
Yep.
So I understand where he's coming from, and it may very well be that he was told to say that.
That was my theory when I first saw him. Like, he was probably, he probably had a meeting with the upper brass of the Calgary, and they were like, all right, we can go out there and just have Brian Burke say this, just to get everybody's ruffles, their feathers ruffled, and then the owner will come out and say, well, okay, calm down,
and downplay it. Yeah,
and then downplay it.
yeah.
But either way, the point is across that it's basically the Calgary Flames are playing essentially, this. They're playing chicken with the government in Calgary, saying, "Look, you don't give us you don't help us get a new arena, we're gonna take off."
Right.
I don't think for a second that Calgary Flames are going anywhere.
Well, I don't either. But if you're in Quebec City, why don't you start talking to them?
Yeah, and
come down here to Raleigh.
And Brian Burke did mention Quebec as a place that they could go.
Yep.
But I can't see why they would choose Quebec over Calgary. I mean, Calgary, obviously, they're very entrenched in that market. I believe it's a bigger city than Quebec.
I think you're right.
There's more money there than Quebec because of the oil business that Calgary has. A lot of the oil companies have headquarters right there in Calgary. So I don't think for a second they would choose Quebec City over Calgary. They'll find a way to get it done, but
yeah.
But I guess from the articles I'm reading, the citizens of Calgary are very well, they'd be equivalent to our conservatives. Mm-hmm. They don't believe in spending public money on arenas for rich NHL hockey team owners.
Mm-hmm.
They want the owners to foot the bill for this. So
right.
So it's that age-old question: should an owner pay for a new building, or should the city help pay for it? Or, and it varies from city to city. But
right.
But I sense that this will probably go on for a few years before somebody finally flinches, and ultimately the new arena will get built and will be paid for one way or another by probably some public funds, some private funds, and leave it at that. So,
right.
All right. So, interesting story coming out of Calgary, but
yes, that is. That is.
But yeah, he mentioned that Calgary is the oldest building by more than 10 years, but they forgot that Madison Square Garden is technically built in 1968. So, even though it had a major renovation recently.
Yeah. Madison Square Garden goes back before that too, but
yeah.
Anyways, I don't know where he got that figure from. He must be counting the renovation as making it a new building.
Right. Right. He has to be.
Yeah.
So in that sense, then yes, I guess Calgary have the oldest building. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I was a kid when the Saddle Dome was built. Man, they thought that was a fantastic place back then. But
don't get me wrong, I'd love to go to watch a hockey game there. If there's anybody out there in Calgary who wants to help us out, I'd love to go up there and watch a game.
Well, we can hit one in Calgary and then go to Edmonton the next night. But yeah, I think this is a case where the people in Calgary see Edmonton and their fancy new building, and now there's
yeah. That's a very good point, Wayne.
that little bit of envy there.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. The last one I have is about the owner of the Arizona Coyotes.
Yes.
On Monday, Andrew Barroway took over full ownership, or the sole owner of the Arizona Coyotes.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of the, I guess they had an ownership group before, and he was one of those owners, but he bought out all the other owners to become the sole owner.
Yep.
Barroway initially purchased a majority stake in the Coyotes back in December of 2014, and while Monday's move sees him attain full ownership of Ice Arizona LLC, a group backed by Anthony LeBlanc and George Gosby, among other minority partners who purchased the Coyotes in 2013. Prior to the sale to Ice Arizona, the league held ownership of the Coyotes for a 4-year period beginning in 2009. The full sale to Barroway means LeBlanc, who doubled as the Coyotes president CEO, and co-owner Gary Drummond, who later became the Coyotes president of hockey operations, will relinquish those roles at the end of the month. The reorganization is an effort to consolidate and strengthen the ownership and resolve various disputes among the existing owners. NHL Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly told Craig Morgan of the Arizona Sports, "We believe this will better position the club to achieve long-term solution in the Valley. The Coyotes' focus will now turn to ensuring their future in the desert. The team has 1 year remaining on its lease at Gila River Arena in Glendale." Earlier this year, a proposal to build a new arena on the campus of Arizona State University fell through. I wonder if it's because of the bickering that the owners were having. And Arizona State finally said, "Look, you guys can't figure this out amongst yourselves. We're
Right.
out. We're out."
Right.
Meanwhile, a subsequent discussion to build a new facility in East Valley has garnered little support from the Arizona legislature. According to Morgan, a new arena in downtown Phoenix is among the top possibilities being considered by Barroway.
Wayne, what do you think? We've talked extensively about this Phoenix team and their situations. I think this is a positive development.
Yes, I think it is. I think it helps them having
Yep.
one guy at the top instead of a too many Chiefs, not enough Indians syndrome. I think it really helps them. And it looks like that Barroway is committed to keeping the team in Arizona,
Mm-hmm.
which is good for the fans.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he's from Philadelphia, according to the article, he does want to keep the team there. Of course, Philadelphia does experience winters, and it's probably nice to get out of Philly once in a while and go out to Arizona and get a little warm air in the wintertime.
Yeah.
But yeah, it looks like he wants to keep the team in Phoenix. It's a big city. It's one of the growing cities in the country, kind of like our area.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they've been there a long time already. I just think this is all they need now is that arena. Once they get that arena done,
Yep.
they should be there long term. People should stop trying to take that team.
Right. I think it's going to solidify things.
Yep.
Because I think this owner, Mr. Barroway, has no intention of letting the team go to Seattle or, all the stuff that's been talked about in the past.
Yep.
Remember somebody from the Phoenix newspaper reported that they saw team members and owners in Seattle going up there to talk to them, and they may have considered stuff.
Yep.
But once this guy buys the team, I think that's out. I think that this means that Phoenix is going to keep the team and they'll resolve this arena situation somehow.
Yep. I think you're right. So yeah, it's good news for Arizona in that case. All right, let's move on to talking some expansion draft.
Yes.
We've got a lot to talk about. You and I talked briefly after last week's show that we wanted to, since this show would be taking place right after the Cup final ended, heading into the expansion draft, Yeah, we would take a look at all 30 teams and come up with a few names as to who we might think Vegas would pick. Now, of course, we're going to have no clue what's going on because there are a lot of deals being made behind the scenes between Vegas and the other owners. In fact, I would almost venture to guess that Vegas is trying to make a specific deal with each of the 30 teams so that before the expansion draft even takes place, that both teams have agreed on which player is going to go to Vegas. Not just Vegas going, okay, I want you. And that team says, has nothing to say about it. I think Vegas is reaching out to all 30 teams, and they are agreeing on a player that will be taken, as opposed to Vegas just, choosing a player without consulting the other team.
Right.
So, with all that in mind, let's take a look at all of the... Well, before we go team by team, I pulled up the 3 articles that have come out over the past several days on NHL.com. They're titled Expansion Draft Buzz. And let's talk about some of the things that have come out. Starting with the one that came out on June 12th. And back on June 12th, let's see, there's several headlines in this article, so I'll just briefly go through them. Bruins won't ask players to waive no movement clauses. That was a report that came out of the Boston Globe. So David Krejci, Patrice Bergeron, Brad Marchand, David Backes, and Zdeno Chara all have no trade clauses or no movement clauses on their contract, and the Bruins have decided they will not be asking them to waive them. So there was speculation that Chara might have been asked to waive his, but they're not going to do so. Here's one that I thought was interesting. Senators have asked Dion Phaneuf to waive his no movement clause.
Right.
And apparently he declined.
Isn't that something?
Which is a very Dion Phaneuf thing to do.
It is that I could have told you that. I mean, I didn't know. He's a good player, okay, but that just reeks of arrogance.
Yep.
Well,
he apparently cited family. Yeah, he apparently cited family needs, or he doesn't want his family to have to move again, as a reason for declining. But the Senators asked him to waive it. He's declined. So that means the Senators, they can't do anything with him. They can't trade him to another team. They have to protect him since he has a no movement clause. So the Senators are going to end up losing a fairly decent defenseman in the expansion draft as a result. Because the only reason they would ask him to waive his no trade clause is because they want to protect 3 other defensemen other than Phaneuf.
Right. He's pulling in $7 million a year.
Well, and that's the thing. When I saw his salary, I was thinking, why wouldn't he agree to this? There's no way for the production that you get from Dion Phaneuf now. I mean, 6-7 years ago, he was one of the best in the league.
Right.
He might have even been a Norris Trophy finalist at one point or another. But now he's declined a little bit, quite a bit. He's a good stay-at-home guy now, good solid defenseman, but he's not a $7 million a year defenseman anymore.
Right.
And he's got that contract.
Yeah, it's way out.
4 more seasons.
Yeah, way out.
So, it's an expensive deal for Ottawa. It's really, really a contract they need to get rid of, but they can't do anything with him.
I goofed. I read where they asked him to. This is something. I read where they asked him in the buzz to waive the no trade clause, and so I didn't. I figured, so he'll waive it and he's gonna go. So when I did my mock draft, I picked him. He'll be a guy. And so that screws up my mock draft. When we come to Ottawa, you'll have to remember that.
All right.
I did not know that he waived that.
Yep.
But I should have guessed that he would do that.
Yep.
You know, he's one of those guys, man. He's been that way since he was in Calgary.
Yep.
You know?
He's one of those guys that you love to hate if he's not on your team.
Yeah.
And even if he is on your team, you may hate him. I'm sure there's Ottawa fans out there that don't like him either. There's certainly going to be some out there that aren't going to like him for this. If Ottawa ends up losing a really good player, oh boy.
They'll be all over him like a cheap suit.
Oh boy, yeah. For 4 more years.
Yeah. They'll be all over him, Wayne, like white on rice.
Oh man. So Dion Phaneuf does a Dion Phaneuf thing and denies the no trade clause request. So interesting development out of Ottawa. We'll see how that plays out here in the future. Speaking of asking for no waive clause, Pittsburgh Penguins goalie Marc-Andre Fleury has agreed to waive his no movement clause.
Yes.
And of course, Fleury, of course, took the Penguins halfway to the Stanley Cup final. Matt Murray ended up taking up the other half. But we've been talking about this tandem all season long.
Yep.
That Pittsburgh had to do something. And I read an article before we started recording that this deal was actually made back in February. And it now explains exactly why things happened the way they did. Because back in March at the trade deadline, it came out during that trade deadline day that Jim Rutherford was not going to move either goaltender, and they were going to ride those two into the playoffs and see how far they could get with them. Lo and behold, we come out now, the season's over and everything's starting to come out. The reason that Rutherford felt good about taking these two to the playoffs and not trying to scramble to trade one of them is that back in February, the team had discussions with Fleury, and Fleury agreed back then that he would waive his no-trade clause.
Isn't that, well, what goes on behind closed doors in the NHL is not like what goes on behind the closed doors at the White House.
Yep. And basically, Fleury's point of view was, look, if he would have said no to the, waiving the no movement clause, Pittsburgh would have been forced to trade him at the deadline to try to get something for him, and then he would be sent off to who knows what team, and who knows what for Stanley Cup, and ultimately it became a factor in Pittsburgh winning the Stanley Cup because Matt Murray went down game 1 of the Stanley Cup final. And I'm not sure who the third string goalie is there in Pittsburgh, but that guy would have been starting.
Yep.
Game 1 of the Stanley Cup final. Pittsburgh probably wouldn't have gotten out of the first round.
That's right. Hey, listen, I don't think there's any doubt. Now, you may have a slight doubt. I think Vegas is going to select him as their choice from Pittsburgh. I really do. At the very least, as a backup goalie.
Yep.
A Stanley Cup winning backup goalie.
Unless Pittsburgh gets an offer from another team and they trade Fleury before the expansion draft.
Right.
If they get an offer from another team that's better than Fleury, or better than what Vegas would give him.
I just think that is if you really think about it, and now that we know that it went on it's a smart move. Pittsburgh's got this figured out, and I think he's going to Vegas.
Yep. Either way, he's gone. Fleury is in all sense of the manner is no longer a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins.
That's right.
He played his last game. So, and you know what? After all these articles have come out, I don't know if you watched the Stanley Cup celebration after the game, but there was a moment there when it was Fleury's turn to get the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
He got it before Murray, of course, because they generally go by. They give it to there's a pecking order of who, obviously the captain lifts it first, and then the captain usually hands it to the player who's played the most without ever winning the Stanley Cup, which in this case was Ron Hainsey, former Carolina Hurricane, who was playing his first playoff ever. So Hainsey gets it, and then it went to other veterans, and then on down the line, the rookies are usually the last ones to get it. Well, so in that order, it became Fleury's turn. Fleury takes the cup, celebrates with it. Who does he hand it to? Matt Murray.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a symbolic passing of the torch, so to speak. From one goalie to the next, and they even alluded to that when they interviewed the players after the fact that was Fleury had in his mind when he got the cup, he was going to give it to Murray no matter what once it was his turn. So
I listen. You got to commend Marc-Andre Fleury. This is a wise thing to do.
Yep.
I'm going to say it right now. Unless there's some sort of trade or some sort of double deal that we don't know about, I think he's going to go to the Vegas Golden Knights, and I think he's going to do well. So, at the very least, as a backup goalie.
Yeah.
So,
well, he wants to start again. He said he wants to get back to being a starting goalie. He thinks he has more hockey left in him, and he knows that this is Murray's team now, and that his time in Pittsburgh is done, and it is time to move on. So wherever he gets dealt, if he gets traded before the expansion draft, ultimately, if Pittsburgh's playing their cards right, they trade him before the expansion draft so that they get something for him.
Right.
Instead of losing him for nothing to Vegas.
True. But I here's what is it? Sunday we're going to know who each team has protected. It's going to be made public.
Yeah, I don't have the dates in front of me, but the team is going to be revealed the night of the NHL awards.
Right.
But yeah, we've got a bunch of dates and times where there's a deadline for the teams to protect their players, and then
that's Saturday.
And then Vegas has 72 hours to determine who they're going to pick, and then that will be revealed at the NHL awards, which I believe is Wednesday night, next Wednesday,
right.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Right. It's either Sunday or Monday that they're going to make public who every team in the NHL protected.
Right.
That is going to be made public.
Right.
So you will know at that point. And as I said, it's possible, very possible, that Pittsburgh may want to try and get something for Fleury. I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
But they have let this go to the they did get something, really. They got a Stanley Cup.
True. You're right.
You got to think about it that way.
Yep.
You kept him on the team. They made a deal. Hey, and they got a Stanley Cup.
Yep. That probably wouldn't have gotten without him.
True. So
now that hindsight is yeah.
That's the way I see it, and I think I think it's a wise move that Fleury's doing this.
Yep. Yeah, he was able to, he knew that Pittsburgh was his best chance of winning a cup this year, so he agreed back in February to. Probably he agreed that yes, I'll waive my no trade clause as long as you keep me on the team for the remainder of this season.
Right.
And they left it at that. Didn't tell anybody about it, and then, and the rest is history. So yeah, I mean, good move by Fleury, being a team guy.
Mm-hmm. Hey, he's won 3 Stanley Cups there.
Yep. Yeah, and he's been a major part of all 3 of them.
Absolutely.
He wasn't the starter for the last 2, but he took the team through the playoffs, the first 2 rounds while Matt Murray was recovering, and they probably wouldn't have won otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
They probably wouldn't have made it that far without him. So yeah. So it'll be interesting to see where he lands next season.
Right.
All right. Another story that came out, Panthers are not going to ask Keith Yandel to waive his no movement clause. So they have decided not to ask him to waive his no movement clause, which means that it's likely that they're going to protect him.
Yes.
And he has
a nice move. Florida better protect him.
Yep.
He's.
Yep. It's not to say they won't trade him, but They're definitely going to protect him. The Islanders decided not to ask Andrew Ladd, Johnny Boychuk to waive their no movement clauses.
Mm-hmm.
So that means Ladd and Johnny Boychuk will be both protected in New York. More stories. Marco Dano. Oh, we talked about that. Getting his contract with the Jets. That has implications in the expansion draft. The Blue Jackets did not ask Scott Hartnell to waive his no movement clause, so they'll be protecting him. Yannick Weber signed with the Predators again. A move to get a defenseman available to serve up to Vegas, so to speak.
Yep.
Which I highly doubt that they will take him, but we'll see. Ducks have a deal in place with the Golden Knights, is another story that came out. The Anaheim Ducks do not need defenseman Kevin Bieksa to waive his no-movement clause because they have a prearranged deal in place with the Vegas Golden Knights, TSN reported. And, of course, they're not announcing what this deal is, but essentially Anaheim has already made a deal with the Knights determining who is going to be chosen.
Right.
So, and I expect more of these deals to come out in the coming days. So they technically have to protect Bieksa, but it looks like Vegas, and it sounds like by the wording of this that Bieksa is not the player that's going to be going to the Knights.
Okay, I did not know that one either. And
Yeah.
I had Kevin Bieksa up as one of the Anaheim Ducks who could be chosen.
Yep.
So
he has a no movement clause, so and they're not going to be waiving it. All right. Next one, Matt Green could be bought out by the Kings. That's a rumor report. That would be a salary dump, so to speak, or free up some salary cap space for them that they will need this summer.
I'm because there's been several of these buyouts.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a question. What you think?
Okay.
Do you think that in most of the cases, and this is just speculation, we have no idea, that a team would do that because they've been in contact with George McPhee, and that's a way of offering up a player that essentially takes them out of the expansion draft, so to speak, and that's the player that Vegas will select.
Well, in the case of Green, I think it is because Green didn't have a no movement clause.
Right.
And he is definitely eligible to be exposed to the Golden Knights, and probably will be. But the Kings wouldn't need to buy him out if they wanted the Knights to choose him. I think the buyout in this case is so that they can free up not only a roster spot but some salary cap space so that they can go out and possibly sign someone in the summer. I don't have... Let me see. I can pull it up. Capfriendly.com. LA Kings. I just want to see where they're at on the salary cap. I imagine they're pretty close. Yeah, they only have, as of right now, according to Cap Friendly, $5 million in cap space.
And boy, at the beginning of the season, you remember they were like $28,000 from the cap.
Yeah.
So LA's done some maneuvering.
Yep.
And
Matt Green was making 2.5. Obviously, buying him out doesn't free up all of that space, all of that 2.5.
Right.
But it will give him a little bit to play with, and they have a couple of restricted free agents they need to sign, but nothing earth-shattering. They've got Kevin Gravel, Nick Shore, and Andy Androhoff that are all restricted free agents that they want to sign. So I don't see Yeah, I think they're just freeing up some space to go out and try to sign a unrestricted free agent, I think is what that move is for. In this particular case, anyway.
So you do not think that Vegas will turn around and take Matt Green, who is a good player, by the way?
I don't think so. Because if they thought Vegas would do that, they wouldn't buy him out, because then Vegas would take him and that would free up all of that 2.5. But by buying him out, it would cost them money if Vegas ended up keeping him. So I think this is just a salary dump to get ready for unrestricted free agency.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So another story came out today. Matt Pumple agrees to terms with the Rangers. Forward Matt Pumple agreed to terms of a new contract with the Rangers on Wednesday. He could have become a restricted free agent July 1, but remains eligible to be exposed to the Golden Knights in the expansion draft. He's one of a few depth forwards, including but not limited to Michael Grabner, Jesper Foss, and Oscar Lindberg, who are candidates to be taken by Vegas with their one pick from the Rangers roster. Pumple played in 40 regular season games this season, but did not play in any of the Rangers Stanley Cup playoff games. I don't know. What's your thoughts on this one?
Well, it's a good signing. Matt Pumple, he played well as a role player, a third or fourth line guy. And I felt comfortable when he had the puck on his stick. He was not a, but I do not think that the Rangers are going to let Michael Grabner be exposed. And that, we haven't talked about it, and I'm waiting to say something about it, but I won't. But there is a player from the Rangers where things happened today. And I just don't think they're going to let Michael Grabner be exposed after the year he had.
Yeah. Well, that's the next story I've got on this is Dan Girardi is going to be bought out by the Rangers.
Yes.
So, and in this case, we talked about it briefly before the show. In this case, I feel this is a total salary dump. He was making $5.5 million a year, and he had 3 years left on that deal. And I think this is a case where the Rangers are right tight up against the cap, and they need to clear some space because there's rumors flying around that the Rangers are a favorite to land Kevin Shattenkirk this summer.
Right.
And they need to clear some space in order to make that happen. So,
right.
So I think this is a case where, because Shattenkirk, I guess he's from Connecticut, and he wants to play for New York. At least that's one report I saw.
Yeah, I've had the same understanding that if he could have been selected by New York instead of Washington, that's what he wanted during the trade deadline period.
Yep.
But that because New York couldn't pony up the deal, he went to Washington, and that's essentially it. He wanted to be a New York Ranger. Now that's rumors that I haven't heard that directly, but that's what the scuttlebutt was. So I don't know that Dan Girardi is going to be the guy, but I guess he could be that's selected. You don't know what George McPhee has worked out or arrangement.
Yep.
But I will say this, and there's a couple things because I'm really going to miss Dan Girardi. Okay, it saddens me. I think he has declined in the last couple of years. I think it's fair to say, but he meant so much to the team in terms of his heart and his. He would block a shot at the drop of a hat. He would sacrifice his body. He did it for years. Great player. I'm going to miss him a lot. And there were a couple tweets that I received. One from Ryan McDonough, which came over the line. It said, 910 games, and that includes his playoff games. 2,038 blocked shots. All-time leader in playoff games. All heart, all grit, all sacrifice. Together we thank and salute you. And that kind of sums it up for me too.
Yep.
A great player. Whether or not he goes anywhere, whether he goes to Vegas or whatever. And of course, Henrik Lundqvist also Instagrammed He said, "For 11 years, you have left everything you had in front of me. The way you competed and paid the price, night in and night out, inspired me more than you know. We will miss you on and off the ice. To me, you are the definition of a warrior, and I will always appreciate what you have done for me and for our team over the years. Thank
Yep.
you, G." So I'm going to miss the guy. He was the heart and soul of the Rangers there for many years.
Yep.
And he left everything out on the ice, night in, night out. I've heard some terrible stuff go around about Dan Girardi. Some people, New York Rangers fans, some of them, talking a lot of garbage. But that's a guy who really, really fit the bill as far as he was never drafted. He walked on the team. And over the years, he made a name for himself, and he became a great player, and I'm going to miss him a lot. So that's all I had to say.
So do you think this releasing him right now at this point is so that they can, because he had a no-trade clause, so
right.
Did they do that so that they can now protect Grabner?
Well, I don't know. I wasn't even ever considering that Grabner wouldn't be one of the 7 forwards. I thought he would be one of the 7 guys protected. I was worried about someone like JT Miller or Kevin Hayes.
Yep.
And now Kevin Hayes is going to be protected. It looks like it if they buy him out. Hayes is the guy that I would think is going to be protected.
Yeah.
So I mean, I could be wrong. But I never really considered, and maybe they are going to let Grabner go. But I'd be shocked by that. I really would be after the year he had. They don't have to sign him for much. He's an unrestricted free agent, but they could sign him for 1 year or 2 years.
Right.
Give him a 2-year deal. So I'd be surprised, very surprised, if Michael Grabner goes, unless they have something in the works, a major signing.
Yeah. Well, with Girardi now off the Rangers, he essentially becomes an unrestricted free agent, and that makes it so that Vegas can now negotiate with him and try to sign him.
I would think that see now that's you're thinking just like I was thinking.
Yeah.
I would think that they would acquire Dan Girardi. That's that's how I look at this. Is that's the player from the Rangers that they would take. It makes sense. He's a great defenseman, and he's still got some good hockey in him. He'd definitely be a top 6 defenseman.
Yep.
So, but stranger things have happened. I don't know. That just seems to me like that's the guy that the deal has been arranged and worked out for. Here's a player that is a no-trade guy. He's been the heart and soul of the team for many years. The way the players are even responding to him leaving, it's like, we salute you, we thank you, good luck. He's going to move on, but I could be wrong.
Well, if they did that to serve him up to Vegas, then why would they buy him out?
Because maybe McPhee will offer him less money. I don't know.
Because now the Rangers are on the hook, or at least in terms of salary cap space, they're on the hook for the next 6 years.
Yeah, they are. 3 years of $5.5 million. Yeah. And we could be wrong. I find it hard to believe that Dan Girardi is not gonna be playing in the NHL next year.
Oh, he will be. He'll land somewhere.
Somebody's gonna take him.
Yep.
And
Vegas has the first crack at him because they get, as part of the expansion process, they have a short window of opportunity to get at any pending unrestricted free agent.
Right. Now McPhee may say, "Hey, look, as part of this deal, if you don't want me to touch Kevin Hayes, I'll take Dan Girardi. You pay him off, and I'm going to sign him. Because they could sign him to a different contract.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm just speculating. I really have no idea.
It's interesting. All right. Well, let's get into this. Let's get into this expansion draft thing. Now, what we decided to do, rather than just come up with an expansion draft team, we decided to just go down through team by team and give our thoughts on 2 to 3 players that we feel are going to be targets for Vegas for each team. And what I figure we do, I've got the cap-friendly tool right up in front of me, so we can refer to that as we go. We'll just go down through this alphabetically. So the first team that we got to talk about is Anaheim. And I personally see Anaheim as a 4-4 situation. 4 forwards, 4D. Instead of the 7-3.
Very interesting.
Just because the defense that they have, they've got Lindholm, Vatanen, and Fowler, and they have to take Bieksa. So, but like we said earlier in the podcast, we don't know what the Ducks are doing because they have a prearranged deal with Vegas already. So we're not going to spend much time on that because their deal is done. Whatever we talk about is moot at this point. But the 3 names I came up with was Silverberg, Cogliano, and Desprez.
Isn't that something?
As guys that are, or Dupre, I guess is the proper way to say his name, as guys that are going to be targets for Vegas. But like we said, a deal is done with them, but we don't know what it is yet. So
I did not pick. Now again, you and I talked about it. The Kevin Bieksa thing. I did not. I didn't know that he was taken off the table and that the team decided to not contest his no trade clause.
Yeah.
Okay. So I had him as one of my picks.
Okay.
I had him. I had Patrick Eaves, and I had Clayton Stoner.
Ah. Okay.
As being people that Vegas might be interested in.
Okay.
I thought they would. I thought that the Anaheim Ducks would do everything they could to protect Andrew Cogliano.
Okay.
And I saw that, but I just thought that they want to keep him. That's what I thought. So
well, it seems like with them having to keep Bieksa, those other 3D that they have, those guys, Lindholm, Vatanen, and Fowler are really good defensemen. And they don't want to lose those. That's why I thought they would go the 8-8 route or the 4-4 route.
Right.
So I guess we'll see with Anaheim. Let's move on to Arizona. The 3 players I've got that are possible targets. Now, if you notice, you'll notice as I go name all my players, is I've been reading a lot that George McPhee is going to be, in the expansion draft specifically, is going to be looking for young and cheap players. So that's kind of what was my thinking when I went with these players. So in Arizona, I've got Braden Shen. I'm sorry, Luke Shen.
Right.
Mitchell Moros and Richardson.
Okay.
Brad Richardson.
Okay.
Now, Brad Richardson is a little older, but he's got a pretty low salary, so
right.
Those are the 3 that I had there. And of course, Moros is a restricted free agent this year, but they would just they would just get his rights. So
on this particular one, I agree with you. Luke Shen was one I had. I put down Zbynek McCulloch.
Oh, okay.
Because I thought, some of these deals, these unrestricted free agent deals, Arizona's not going to want to, they got to sign this guy and they got to sign this guy and and eventually maybe one of these unrestricted free agent deals, we're not going to try and mess with that one.
Yeah.
So we'll expose him and leave him open so that Vegas can worry about him. Yep. And that's the case with Zbynek McCulloch.
Yep.
And the next guy I had was Alexander Burmistrov, which in hindsight might not be right, but he's a restricted free agent for the same reason. They may and that might not actually be a good pick to expose him, but
yeah, I think they might end up protecting him.
Yeah, and I get a gut feeling that they might.
Yep. Yeah. Well, yeah, and the thing with Arizona too is they've got a ton of restricted free agents this summer that they've got to re-sign. Ton of them.
Yes, they do.
So, now my fax machine is, or my home phone is. I've given that number, my home phone, to literally nobody, and yet that phone continues to ring. So I know it's nobody I know. Because I haven't given it out to anybody. So I only have it because they bundle it with my cable package. All right, well, let's move on to Boston. And I'm feeling pretty confident, obviously, being a Bruins fan.
Yeah.
McQuaid, Kevin Miller, and Malcolm Subban are going to be the three that are likely to, or one of the three are likely to go in Boston.
Wow. Okay.
And mostly is due to the fact that, Bruins can only protect three. They got to keep Chara, defenseman. Yep. Torrey Krug absolutely will be protected. And I think there's a lot of speculation. You've got McQuaid, Miller, and Miller. Kevin Miller, Colin Miller. Colin Miller's 24. He's significantly younger than McQuaid and Miller. So I think the Bruins are going to choose, and he's cheap too. He's only $1 million a year player.
Okay.
$1 million a year player. And with the fact that they've got to sign David Pastrnak this summer, he's a restricted free agent. He's going to be getting a huge pay raise.
Yep.
They need some cheap defensemen on that team. So that's why I think the Bruins are going to ultimately protect Colin Miller. He's young, he's cheap. They're going to let Kevin Miller and McQuaid get exposed. I think ultimately I think one of those two defensemen is going to go. I threw Subban in there because he is a former first-round draft pick. He's really never been given a real good chance in Boston, being stuck behind Tuukka Rask. And I think a change in scenery will be good for his development. And this might be the opportunity that he gets. That Vegas might just go ahead and pick Subban to be their number 3.
Wow.
Behind whoever, obviously we both feel that Fleury will end up being one of the two goalies in Vegas, but
right.
I think Subban would be a good number 3 as a future guy. But
well, I had Colin Miller, and I don't know Boston. This is kind of like I'm shuddering here when I talk to you, Wayne, because I don't know the Bruins, and I picked Colin Miller, but I went with Adam McQuaid and Jimmy Hayes.
Okay.
Because I keep abreast of that Black and Gold Hockey podcast. If I'm talking to if I'm listening about the Bruins.
Yep.
And they really in a kind way do not like Jimmy Hayes, and would just as soon he be traded.
There's a lot of fans that would hope that Hayes and Bolesky, for that matter, get picked up because both guys are underperforming. I think they combined for 8 goals. And both of them are over $2 million a year apiece. So yeah, they're both those guys are expensive and they're underperforming. And Boston fans want them both gone. But for that reason, I don't think Vegas is going to touch either one. That's why I didn't include them.
Right. Well, that was it. I've said, and you're probably right that they might not select Jimmy Hayes, but I said they would expose him just because he will be exposed probably.
He will be exposed, and so will Bolesky.
But not so.
Yeah.
So.
All right, Buffalo. I have Franson, Kulikov, and Delorier as my 3.
Oh, Franzen.
Yep.
Okay, that's interesting. Mine, and you're gonna. I had Dmitry Kulikov. I had Jake McCabe, who is a cheap defenseman.
Yep.
That that fits the bill for McVee. And then I had Sam Reinhart.
I almost picked him.
I think they may expose Sam, and I think that's the kind of guy, being a center, that McPhee may go for.
Yep. Now, it should be noted that Franson and Kulikov are both unrestricted free agents this summer, so obviously,
yep.
You know, they're not gonna waste protecting an unrestricted free agent unless they know for sure they're gonna sign him. So, but I think Vegas might take a shot at one of those two defensemen just for the negotiation rights that they will have at getting their hands on them before everybody else.
Right. That's a very good point. And here we are. That's the only vacant team, no head coach.
Yep.
So it's getting down to nut cutting time, I guess, and I
expect a decision would be made by the time the draft comes.
Yep. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to Calgary.
The Calgary Flames.
I have Shinkarik, Boma, and Poirier. I can never say his name right. Poirier. Emile Poirier. I don't know. Very young player.
Yeah.
Not a lot to choose from on this team if you want to stay away from older guys anyway. Because, you got Matt Stajan out there, but... And Vegas will have to take some of these expensive players on because they have to hit that floor. But, they're for the most part, they're going to try to hit that floor as close as they can, I think.
Yeah.
You're going to see their ultimate, overall salary be right at the minimum that they have to go.
Right. You listen, this team has a lot of unrestricted and restricted free agent deals. They got a lot of negotiations. Out there. And I looked at it as, well, they're going to expose players that they just as soon not have to go through the deals with so that they free up cap space and George McPhee takes on the contract. So I picked Chris Versteeg.
Oh, okay.
I picked Sam Bennett.
Yep.
Who is a restricted free agent. And then I picked Dennis Weidman, who is a good D. He's a good defenseman.
Yep.
And but now that once again gets into Calgary may protect him.
I see Calgary protecting Sam Bennett. He's a prospect.
Yeah.
That they probably don't want to get rid of.
Right. But if you look up and down, there's a lot of deals to be done on that team.
Yep.
And that was my thinking on it.
Yep. Not a bad thought. All right. Let's move on to Carolina. I have Andrew Miller, Brock McGinn, and Andre Nestrasil.
Yep.
As my three. It was hard. It was hard to pick this team. Carolina's done a good job at protecting themselves.
They have.
There's not a lot of talent being left exposed on this team.
Yep. One of them I'm kicking myself right now because I don't see, but the only reason I picked Brock McGinn, the only reason I chose Ryan Murphy is, again, it's a cheap defenseman, fits the mold of what, although I could see Carolina protecting him.
Yep.
McPhee would go for somebody like that. Then I picked Eddie Lack. Because Carolina's not going to keep three goalies.
No.
They're not.
No,
so
one of those three has got to go. Yeah.
With the fella out of Chicago, and it's not
Scott Darling.
Scott Darling has got the starting job. We know that. So that means, who are you going to have as a backup? Cam Ward or Eddie Lack? Well, they're going to, more than likely, I would think, keep Cam Ward, which means Eddie Lack is the guy, and I think they'll expose him, although Cam Ward is going to be exposed as well.
Right.
And I would think that out of those two, Ward has a larger salary.
Yep.
And so I think they would pick Eddie Lack. That's my feeling on it.
Yep. Yeah, that's a lot of money. If they had to take all three into the season, all three of them are making. Eddie Lack is the cheapest at 2.7.
Right.
So yeah, they've Carolina's got to move one of those goalies without a doubt, one way or another.
One way or another. That's right.
Yeah. All right, let's talk Chicago Blackhawks. Now this is an interesting case.
Very.
Because there's a lot of rumors coming out of Chicago. Obviously, Chicago is in deep, deep trouble with the cap themselves, so they need to move some players out. And they probably have been talking quite extensively with Vegas. And I've heard Marcus Kruger's name come up quite a bit.
Yep.
As a good chance that Vegas may go ahead. This seems to me is going to be one of those deals where Chicago will move Kruger and let's say either a prospect or a draft pick, because Kruger is an expensive player.
Yeah, he's $3.8 million or something.
And they're going to have to make it worthwhile for Vegas to take on a big contract like that for what Kruger gives you on the ice. $3 million is expensive,
right?
And but his name keeps coming up as one that is a good possibility of going to Vegas. The other names I have is Van Riemsdyk and what was the third name I had? See, I almost thought Oduya, but he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. But I eventually went with Michael Latta as the third name. But I really think Kruger is going to be the one that goes.
Kruger and Van Riemsdyk.
Yep.
And then Andrew Desjardins.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Because he's an unrestricted free agent. Wasn't he with Montreal? He's a Canadian, right?
No, I don't think so.
Where did he come from?
I can't remember.
Desharnais is the Montreal Canadian.
Yes.
So that scraps. But I picked Desjardins as someone Chicago. Yeah.
All right. How about Colorado? I've got Joe Colburn, a former Boston Bruin draft pick, Barbero and Jelena as my three. Mark Barbero and Eric Jelena.
Oh. Well, I had Fedor Tutin, Mikhail Grigorenko, and Blake Como.
Okay. Veterans.
I hear the scuttlebutt on Colorado that they're going to trade Matt Duchene. That's what I hear.
Yep.
But they're probably not going to expose him. They're going to try and get something for him.
Yep.
And for all I know, a deal may already be worked out. But I just that's how I see it. They're going to try and get something for Matt Duchene.
There's been a lot of talk out of Boston that they've been in talks with Colorado for either Matt Duchene or Landeskog.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be one or the other going to Boston. So, and the rumor that I was hearing out of Boston was Don Sweeney's been shopping around their first round draft pick this year's draft to see if he can get a player in return for this season.
Very good.
In return for that draft pick. So, and those two names have come up in those talks. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens. All right, how about Columbus?
Yeah, that was an interesting one. The Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yeah,
they were right at the top of my list, and there are some players. Let me tell you that Vegas is going to be interested in that they cannot protect, and I can tell you that right now.
Yep.
Matt Calvert, right at the top of the list.
Yep.
Matt Calvert is probably not. You take a look at that team; they're not going to have a chance to protect him.
Nope.
And he is a good player. I would think very, very highly that Vegas may go for him.
Yep, he's a good player, and his salary is pretty low at 2.2.
Yep.
Yep, I agree. I have him on my list. I also have Jack Johnson and William Karlsson as my third.
Okay, Carlson, and I saw that, and I looked at, but I picked Jack Johnson. My third was a guy that, if he's on the right team, could become a tremendous player, and that's Sonny Milano.
Okay.
Because they're not going to be able to protect him. And you
Nope.
said it was either 1 or 2 year players. He is in his entry level contract, but I think he's only 21. I think he's played for 2 years.
Well, he's on the exempt list on Cap Friendly.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it looks like he'll be safe.
He'll be safe. Okay.
Yep.
So nix that idea. But
Yep.
I think it'll be either Calvert or Johnson. I think they're gonna probably pick one of those two guys.
Yep. I think you're right. All right. How about Dallas? I've got an interesting pick for them.
Let me get to Dallas here.
I've got Greg Pateryn,
Yep.
Curtis McKenzie, and I've got a wild one here. Valerie Nikushkin.
Oh,
You know
wow.
how we had that article recently where Nikushkin was 50-50 on whether he'd come back to the
Yeah.
NHL. Dallas owns his rights, so he will be on the list of unprotected players. And
Very interesting.
Vegas could go ahead and pick up his rights.
I did not think about that at all. That's very interesting.
Yep.
I had Patterson too,
Yep.
but I went with the Kerry Lettinen again. Now that you have what's his name, played for Tampa Bay, then went to Los Angeles. Now is been given the starting job in Dallas. Who's the goalie? Ben Bishop.
Yep.
Ben Bishop was traded for. He's bought and paid for. He's the starter.
Yep.
He's been given that. So they're going to expose, of course, both Niemi and Lettinen. Lettinen at a high price tag. I agree. He's at a high price tag.
That's a very
But
high
Dallas-
price tag, 5.9.
Dallas is not going to be able to keep both those guys.
Well, this is another case where they've got to get rid of, and I would even venture to say they need to get rid of both Niemi and Lettinen, because you're going to have nearly $10 million if you keep two of those three, Lettinen, Bishop, and Niemi. If you keep two of those three, you're going to have over $10 million tied up in goaltending.
Yep.
And that's way too much money tied up in goaltending. I
agree.
think you're going to look at Dallas. You're going to see Dallas looking at moving both Niemi and Lettinen one way or another.
Good point.
And go with the cheaper alternative as a backup.
But I could see Lettinen blending in as the backup goalie with Marc-Andre Fleury. I could see it. That's why I put him down now. He has got a high price tag. In fact, I think he's being paid more than Marc-Andre Fleury is.
Yeah, 5.9 is pretty steep for a goalie.
Yep.
Especially one that's not a guaranteed starter.
That's right. That's right. And then I had Alex Hemsky.
Okay.
Unrestricted free agent right winger. They're not going to protect him, so.
Yep. All right, Detroit. I've got Riley Sheehan, Adam Clendenning, and Nick Jensen.
Okay, I had some interesting thinking on this. Okay, again, Detroit is in the mode of rebuilding. So I did pick Glendening as one. I looked down the list. You know, sometimes these expansion teams pick a player who is part of the old guard. They'll take a chance and pick an older guy and have him come into the team because he played very well. He's well known. Fans will love him. So I picked Nicholas Kronwall. That gets rid of a cap, $4.75 million. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent in 1 year anyways. But he's a good defenseman.
Yep.
and Detroit solves their problem. Now, yeah, again, they're throwing in a draft pick, maybe something, but that's a good D man for Vegas. And yeah, they pay a higher price for him, but he could bring some good experience and locker room presence. Um, I don't know. That was my thinking on it.
Yep. Yep. Well, Detroit is right up against the cap, fairly
Yep.
close. Only $5 million and change available. So, yeah, they may look to move a high salary guy. Their two goalies are both pretty highly paid too. $4 million, 5.2. Jimmy Howard and Mrazek.
Right.
So, but I'm not sure Jimmy Howard will get chosen at that price by Vegas. All right, let's take a look at Edmonton. I've got Samuelson, Reinhart, and Pitlick as my three.
Okay, Edmonton. I do have Reinhardt. Yep, I have Reinhardt. I have Desharnais, who
Okay.
came over from Montreal.
Yep.
And then I went out on a limb. I picked Zach Cashin, although he is a good player, and I could see Edmonton protecting him. Simply because Edmonton is going to have to sign some of these players. They got restricted free agents and unrestricted free agents.
All
And
throughout their lineup, yeah.
Yep. They may look to try and get rid of one of those contracts. Zach Cashin is someone who George McPhee would probably be interested in.
Yeah, he'd be a good grit guy that they have. Yep.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay. All right, let's go to Florida.
Okay, Florida. Hang on here.
I've got, with Florida, I've got Sevier, Pizik, and McKenzie.
Okay, let me see here. Florida.
Yep.
Florida, I have. Oh, you're you're going to disagree with this whole thing here. Okay, Florida has some aged players. Again, Jaromir Jagr. Okay,
Yep.
He's 45 years old.
You think he'd actually go out to Vegas?
I think he'd go wherever he can play in the NHL. Now, I could see he brings the fans into Florida, so they may say no, we're going to protect him.
I don't think they're going to protect him, but I also don't think Vegas is going to touch him either.
Yep. And I thought about that. How about unrestricted free agent Thomas Vanek?
Possible.
Hasn't been playing up to par for what Florida needed.
Yep.
A good player.
But I don't know if Vegas would pick him just simply in order for those negotiation rights. I think they would take his chances and let him go to free agency available to everyone and then take their chances there.
Well,
and then pick someone else.
Yep.
But
my third pick, you're going to laugh me out of the. I put Roberto Luongo down there.
Bobby Lou.
Yeah.
I thought about picking him, but
yeah, and there's a logic there to it. Because
he could help them out in net until a young kid is ready.
Right.
Yep.
So I don't know.
All right. Yep. Let's go to L.A. This one was interesting. They don't have a lot to choose from either.
Yeah, they don't. They protected themselves well.
Yep. L.A., I've got Jordan Nolan, Braden McNabb, and I went goaltender on this one, Jeff Zatkoff.
Oh.
He played before, he played quite a bit when Quick was hurt. He also he's got some playoff experience when he was with Pittsburgh. When before Matt Murray got there, Zatkoff was one of the backups for Fleury. Fleury got hurt, and I can't remember who the other goalie was there at the time. And Zatkoff played a few playoff games for Pittsburgh.
Right.
Did fairly well.
Yep, he beat us. He beat the Rangers last year.
Yep.
Or 2 years ago, actually, I think it was. No, it was last year. Last year, Jeff Zatkoff won a game.
I think Zatkoff was there before Murray. Was both Murray and Fleury hurt?
Yeah, that's right. Murray and Fleury were hurt. Zatkoff took the net.
Okay.
He beat us one game, and we beat him in one game.
Yep. So he's got a little bit of playoff experience, but
Yep,
not a bad guy. And he comes cheap, 900,000.
yep. That's a good one.
So I figured, their third goalie is going to be a cheap guy. He's not going to be a $3, $4, $5 million guy. So
Yep. And we're both in agreement that they're going to get a good goalie.
yep,
Vegas is going to get a good goalie, no
Yep.
question about it.
yep.
I picked Braden McNabb as well, and this is the one, Wayne. I picked Matt Green
Okay.
because I just see it as he's a good defenseman. He's in the range of what McPhee would bring in, and he's a good player. I see him as they can't protect him with Doughty and gosh, I have to pull it up on Cap Friendly, but there's three guys on Vegas right now. There's certainly they're going to say protect, and so it exposes a couple defensemen. Matt Green was one of them, and I figured that that might be the guy that McPhee would go for.
Yep.
Then the other one was Kyle Clifford.
Okay.
Again, a small contract, 1.6 million. He's going to have to take in some of those type players. He's a center, and he's not an unrestricted free agent until way down the line.
Yep.
So,
Interesting. All right, let's talk Minnesota. And
Minnesota.
this team is going to lose a defenseman, I think.
yeah, I bet this is the one. Let me see. I think you're right.
I actually had a hard time picking players from this team simply due to the fact is there's so many players in this team that are going to be left exposed that are
Yep.
really good players.
Yes. Yep.
You've got Jason Zucker, you've got Chris Stewart's not a bad player.
Yep.
You've got Martin Hansel, you've got defensemen, you've got Jonas Brodin, Marco Scandella, Matt Dumba. I mean, there's a lot of names here. I
That's
ultimately chose the three defensemen, Brodin, Scandella, Dumba. Now, I have heard a lot of rumors that Brodin is being shopped around. So,
Yeah.
but,
I
yeah.
picked Scandella and Dumba too. Same logic, same reasoning.
Yep.
And then I went with Martin Hansel
Okay.
because he's an unrestricted free agent. They got him from Arizona, didn't they?
Yes.
And they didn't
Yes,
want to make a deal
at the
They'll
trade
let-
deadline. Yep.
They'll let McPhee sign him. See.
Yep.
So that's my thinking.
Okay. How about Montreal?
Yeah.
Montreal, I've got, and it's already come out that who retired from Montreal?
Steve Ott.
That's right, Steve Ott retired, so he won't be back. You've got, I've got Daniel Carr, who they may protect. Who knows?
Yep.
I've got Nestorov and Terry
Oh,
are my three.
I had down a couple defensemen. I had Davidson and Jordy Ben. They
Okay.
may take one of those, and then I had Paul Byron
Yep.
as a third.
Yep. Yeah, Montreal doesn't have a whole lot of depth, so they're not going to get a great player out of Montreal for sure.
That's right. That's a very good point, Wayne.
So, all right, let's look at our Nashville Predators. I've got some pretty decent players going, and a couple of these guys were big performers in the playoffs. I've got Yarncroc, Sissons, and Weber.
Very interesting. I
That's
did
my
not pick
three.
Weber, although I've seen the talk now with the contract and everything.
Yep.
I picked Ryan Ellis.
Okay.
Even though he did get hurt in that game, I still think that he's a good defenseman.
Yep.
Fits the bill. Colton Sissons, and this one is going to shock you. But I just heard that they're going to try and sign him as a restricted free agent. They're going to try and come to terms with him. Victor Arvidsson.
Oh yeah, they want to keep him.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's not a good pick. So that was my 3.
Okay. But yeah, Nashville's got a lot of talent there. They're going to get a pretty decent player no matter what out of Nashville.
Yep.
All right, New Jersey. I've got Gadzik, Prout, and Merrill as my 3. Again, not a lot to choose from on this team. This is not a very good team, so.
Nope. I had Stefan Noesen, Bo Bennett, and John Moore.
Okay.
The only guy I really know is John Moore because he played for the Rangers. $1.67 million. He's a good defenseman. Again, cheap. Might not be a top 6, but could be.
Yep.
They don't have a lot of good selection.
No.
So.
Nope. All right, the Islanders.
Yep. They will get a good player out of the Islanders.
Yep, they will. I've got Berube, Pullock, and Hickey as my 3.
That's good. I picked Hickey as well. I picked Ryan Strome. That's an iffy guy whether they protect him or not.
I think they're going to protect him.
I think they will.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, I put him down and he's right on the bubble.
Yep.
And then I picked Josh Bailey, who they probably will protect. But that was my 3.
Yep. Cool.
They're going to get a good player out of the Islanders, no question.
Yep. All right, let's talk about your Rangers.
Yeah. I just don't know here. But I wrote this yesterday. Okay?
So this is before
Dan Girardi.
Yep.
Okay? So I had Kevin Hayes, Jesper Fast, and I had them exposing Mark Stahl.
Now Fast he's going to be out for the first couple months of the
He's hurt.
Yeah.
He is hurt. He's on the injured reserve. But I just didn't see I just don't see them exposing JT Miller. And I don't see that below JT Miller and Kevin Hayes, I don't see that Vegas is going to be interested in any of those players. But Mark Stahl would be somebody that if they did expose, but now that they've bought out Dan Girardi, they're gonna protect Mark Stahl.
Yeah. Well, they have to protect Mark Stahl. Doesn't he have a no trade?
He does have a no trade.
Yeah.
But you saw what they did with Dan Girardi. He had a no trade as well.
Yeah.
So.
I guess they could buy out Stahl, but yeah, I guess that remains to be seen. I had Adam Clendenning, Michael Grabner, and Antti Ranta.
Yeah, Antti Ranta's a good one, and I thought about putting him down.
Yep.
And he's somebody who Vegas may take. They may take Antti Ranta. He did very well as a backup goalie.
Yep.
But he wouldn't be a starter.
No, he'd be a backup.
Mm-hmm.
See, I'm thinking Vegas is going to go with Fleury and 2 backups, not 2 starters and a backup.
Right.
I think they're just not going to want to tie up a lot of money in goaltending. But we'll see.
I'm not. Why did you pick Michael Grabner?
I just think the Rangers won't be able to protect him. Because I've got the Rangers protecting Nash, Stepan, Kreider, Zuccarello, Miller, Hayes, and Foss.
Okay.
But in that case, with Foss being injured, they might go ahead and expose him, thinking that now his value is a little lower, and protect Grabner instead.
Yep.
So if they do that, if they take the chance and expose Foss, they'll be able to protect Grabner. I think that's the either-or situation for the Rangers. They'll protect either Foss or Grabner, or they can't do both.
Right.
Because on defense, I have them protecting Stahl, McDonough, and Klein.
Yep. I agree with that.
So
And they could protect Nick Holden now that they've bought out Girardi.
yep.
He played well, but I don't. Is just that's up in the air.
Yeah, and Holden's cheaper than Klein. So if they need that cap space, they may expose Klein, protect Holden.
Now Klein is another one of those guys who's injured right now.
Yeah. Okay.
So they may expose him, but I don't think that as an injured player, Vegas would select him.
Yeah.
Right. The Rangers are hit and miss. They may get a good player. They may not. They've protected themselves pretty decently. You just don't know what this Girardi deal means. You don't know. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to Ottawa.
Ottawa. Okay.
I've got Ottawa. I've got Rupert, Mathot, and Borowicki.
Oh. I'm nowhere close. And again, Dion Phaneuf, I didn't know this is the team.
Yeah, they gotta keep him. And
Yep,
they're obviously going to keep Carlson. And I
Yep.
have Cody Ceci as their third D.
Okay. Tommy Wingles. He played well in the Stanley Cup a couple years ago with San Jose.
Yep.
Unrestricted free agent.
Yep.
Mark Stone. He's a good player.
Good player.
I just wasn't sure on that one. But I looked it over, thought about it as some of these teams got to let a high salary player go. And when I say high salary,
Like Bobby Ryan.
Bobby Ryan.
7.2. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not a 7.2 production guy, that's for sure.
No, he's not.
So, and I think they may leave Bobby Ryan exposed just simply due to the fact that, they'll say, "Oh, well, there's no way Vegas is going to take Bobby Ryan with that cap hit." But one can only know. Who knows?
Yeah.
All right. How about Philadelphia?
Philadelphia. I got him.
Raffle, Brennan, and Cousins are my three. And there wasn't a lot to choose from on this team.
No, there's not. Matt Reed.
Okay.
But I had Raffle, and I had Brandon Manning.
Yep. I almost went with Manning, but chose otherwise.
Yep.
All right. How about Pittsburgh?
Yeah, that was another interesting one, and we know now that Marc-Andre Fleury is probably their choice.
Yep.
But I had Justin Schultz, and I had Tom Kuhnhackl.
Yeah, I thought about Kuhnhackl. I went with Schultz, Cole, and Wilson. Well, of course, Fleury is in the mix too. I should have had it should have been Fleury, Schultz, and Wilson. I think is what I would have gone.
Yep. I just think the price too of Marc-Andre Fleury, $5.75 million for your starting goalie.
It's not
I could
bad.
just see McPhee jumping all over that.
Yep.
A Stanley Cup winner. He's still a good goalie.
Yep.
That's the starter, I think.
Well, yeah, I think all these other players are just a moot point at this point because they're going to go with Fleury in this case. All right, San Jose.
Yep.
I have Goudreau, Dillon, and Schlemko.
Oh, man. Mine is an exact copy, except I picked Justin Braun. I had Dillon and Schlemko. All 3D.
Yep.
And that's an interesting one.
Yep. Yeah, it sure is.
They're going to get a good player from San Jose. That's for sure.
Well, they're a good team, so yeah.
Yep.
All right. How about St. Louis? Now, I had a trouble with this one. Vladimir Sabatka was a name that I was considering, because he just came out of nowhere. He was a guy that wasn't playing with the team.
Yep.
They owned his rights, and then all of a sudden at the end of the season, he gets done with his European team and decides to sign with St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
And he played so well in the playoffs. Now they got to figure out, okay, do we got to protect him or we not?
Right.
I think they ultimately will protect him, which will leave a guy like David Perron
And that's who I have.
exposed.
And that's exactly what I was thinking when I saw Vladimir Sabatka on there. I was like, no, they're gonna protect him. That's just like Radulov.
Yep.
Why would you expose him now? He had a great year.
Yep. And I've got Nail Yakupov and Ryan Reeves as my other two.
Ooh, Nail Yakupov.
Yep.
Not living up to the billing again. That's interesting. That's very interesting.
Yep.
I saw it as they were going to protect Nail Yakupov simply because he has the potential. But I picked Patrick Berglund and Robert Bortuzzo.
Okay. Interesting. Yep. Yeah, I think they're the Yakupov situation is people are tired of waiting for him, but he's an RFA. I think they might be able to sign him cheap.
Yeah.
Since he has yet to produce at the levels that he was expected to. All right, Tampa Bay.
Yes.
This is going to be another team where they're going to get a good player no matter what.
Going to get a good player. That's right. Doesn't matter.
I've got Nemestikov.
Oh, I thought so strong about putting him down, but I didn't.
I've got Braden Coburn
Mm-hmm.
and Jonathan Racine, only because he's young and cheap.
Wow.
But I think Nemestikov is the guy there.
He could be, and I thought about it very strongly. Here's my thinking. I went with Jason Garrison, and then I picked Jonathan Drouin because he didn't want to come back and play in Tampa. He wanted them to trade him. Then he came back and he played real well, but I think there's some bitterness. I just see them as this is their chance. They can move him and expose him, and if Vegas picks him, then he's gone.
Yep.
You know? And the other guy I picked
I
Go
just
ahead.
figured they would protect Drouin, but
and he's a great player, and maybe the team has changed their feelings, you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Maybe everything's all rosy and
Well,
and
I
good
think
feeling
he
again.
for him and for sure, I think he just needed to grow up a little bit, but
Yeah. The other guy I picked was Ryan Callahan. I just see, I don't know. I just don't see Tampa Bay protecting him. Maybe they will. He's got a high price tag.
he does. Yeah, that's that, and they may go with that. Leave him exposed just because they're in another case. I think they're pretty uptight
cap
against
trouble.
the cap. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they might leave a high salary guy unprotected. Well, Callahan has no movement, so
Oh, he does?
yeah.
Nix that one then. I
Yep.
didn't. Yeah. I thought I had gotten every one of those guys out, but okay, that nixes that one then. But I think Drouin is an intriguing pick. McPhee would definitely go for somebody like that, and it all depends on what is his relationship with the team, the front management, and other players. Because again, if he's a problem, they'll expose him. If Vegas doesn't pick him,
Yep. Yeah, I think I don't know. And there has Drouin's names come up a lot around the league as a possible guy moving via trade.
right.
So
We're going to talk about another one here in a minute when we get to Winnipeg. But Drouin is one of those guys.
Yep. All right. Well, the next team I've got up is Toronto.
Yep.
And I've got Kirby Reichel,
Mm-hmm.
Martin Marinson,
Mm-hmm.
and Alexei Marchenko.
I picked Marchenko as well.
All young guys.
I picked Eric Fair.
Okay.
And my thinking on this was Brian Boyle, an unrestricted free agent. So either he's gone, he's a veteran presence, he's played in a lot of playoff games. Maybe Toronto will protect him. I don't know. But they're going to have to sign him.
Yep. Yeah, they wouldn't protect him unless they signed him.
Yep.
Unless it's like the Pittsburgh situation where there's a backdoor deal that we don't know about.
Right.
That they know that he's going to side.
There's so many angles to think about this.
Oh, I know. That's why I say all this speculation, it could go any way. So,
yeah.
All right. We have left Vancouver.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Sedins have no movement. Louis Eriksson has no movement, so they're not going anywhere. Not a lot to choose from in Vancouver. It's not a very good team.
That's right.
But I chose Lucas Biza.
Mm-hmm.
I chose Jason Magna, cheap young player. He'll probably end up being Spiza. I think he's the odd man out. And I got Brendan Gaunce, prospect.
Wow. I picked Bo Horvat, although they're probably going to protect him. He's a restricted free agent. I picked Ben Hutton, and I picked Alex Biega.
Okay. Yep.
My thinking on they very well may select a defenseman from Vancouver.
Yep. Either way, they're not getting a very good player from Vancouver, no matter who they choose.
That's right.
And I think in this case, this is where you may see a Bo Horvat or Brendan Gaunce, a very young prospect with some upside. I don't think they're going to choose a veteran from this team.
That's a very good point.
Yep.
New coach, too, Travis Green.
Yep. All right, let's talk about the Capitals.
Yeah, this is
a team that's got some cap issues.
They do, and they got a lot of good players.
They've got players. They've got players that are going to be leaving the team. You've got T.J. Oshie, who wants to stay in Washington, but they're going to have to find a way to fit him under the cap. You've got on defense Kevin Shattenkirk, who's going to be UFA, who sounds like is definitely not going back.
Right.
So you got all these players that are coming and going already. It's a good core on this team.
Mm-hmm.
But choosing a a Washington player was a little difficult for me. Ultimately, I think they're going to go with Philip Grubauer.
That's who I picked
as the guy coming off the team. But just for the sake of this, we got to pick two other guys. I had Darren Dietz and Nathan Walker. Just two young prospects that have yet to play much.
I threw out a high salary guy with a lot of experience, played with the Penguins, Brooks Orpik.
Oh.
Because Washington has to work a deal where they lower their salary cap.
Yep.
They have to. Somebody's got to go. A big name guy
or a big salary guy. Yeah.
A big salary guy. And I thought dangle Brooks Orpik out there and see whether or not Vegas bit.
Yep.
He is at a high price tag, but I could see that happening.
Yep.
And Brooks Orpik is a good player.
Yeah, he's a good, solid defenseman, and he's up there in age, so he doesn't have a whole lot of years. I think he's only got 2 more years left in his contract. So, yeah, not a bad name. All right,
I had Grubauer and Orpik and Tom Wilson.
Okay. Well, I figured Wilson would be protected, but
Might be.
yep. Another name I thought about was Lars Eller, but that's
Yeah.
another one they may protect him. But and there's been a lot of talk in Washington of Ovechkin who may or may not be available
Yeah, I've heard that too.
for the quote unquote right deal.
Right. Yeah, that's going to be a
But-
high
but
price
who-
guy.
Yeah, what are you gonna give to get? What kind of value can you expect to return for Ovechkin? I mean, it would
Yeah.
it would probably be multiple first round draft picks to start.
What's he being paid per year?
9.5.
God. Oh my God.
And it doesn't expire till the end of 2021. So so he's got 4 more years left on that contract.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. All right, we're at Winnipeg. That's our last team.
Yep. They're going to get a good player from Winnipeg.
Yep, I've got Dano because of the recent news
Yep.
on him. I've got Mark Stewart, good
Yep.
veteran defenseman, and I've got Sean Matthias.
Okay, I had Sean Matthias and Mark Stewart, both of them, same reasons.
Yep.
But again, here's a guy who's already told the management in Winnipeg, let me go. I don't want to stay here. I'm a right shooting defenseman.
Oh,
And
Jacob
I don't want to
Trouba.
stay here. You are not paying me enough. Jacob Trouba.
Jacob Trouba.
And
Yep.
because he isn't happy with the way that management and coaching has handled him, I could see him saying, just expose me in the expansion draft. Just do me that favor.
They're not going to lose him for nothing, though. He's going to have some value.
And you're right.
I think you may see them protect him and look to trade him in the offseason, get some value for him.
Mm-hmm.
But that goes to show that Winnipeg might be one of these 4-4 guys where they can only protect 8 players.
Right.
Because they got to protect
That's a very good
Trouba.
point.
They
Yep.
got to protect Trouba. They got to protect Tyler Myers. He's too good. Toby Enstrom and Dustin Byfuglien both have no trade clauses.
And they're going to protect Dustin Byfuglien.
Well, they
Not
have
gonna-
to. The no movement clause says they have to. So this team will protect 4 Ds, and then that means they can only protect 4 forwards, which leaves some pretty decent forwards available.
Mm-hmm.
Marco Dano being one of them, who just signed a deal. So, yeah. But, all right.
Very interesting.
So, ultimately, though, with all this said, and, of course, there's some backdoor deals going on that we don't know about, we both feel, correct me if I'm wrong, that Vegas is going to have a good team right off the gate.
Yeah, they're going to come out swinging.
Because I think their strategy is, or at least from what I've been reading, they're going to be, in the expansion draft, they're going to be shooting for young and cheap for the most part. And they're going to go, they're shooting for picking the players that will get them to the floor and a little bit above. You're not going to see them go pick $70 million worth of players here.
Right.
You're going to see them, whatever the minimum is. I think it's like 46, something like that.
Yep.
46 million. I can pull it right up here. Draft team. Whoop. No. Draft team. Yeah, 43.8 is the minimum that they're going to have to hit. I think you're going to see them in that 45 range with this expansion draft. And it's going to be mostly guys that are between 22 and 30 years old.
Yeah.
That are relatively low price. The only high-priced guys they're going to take is guys that they get in prearranged deals with other teams that they are agreeing to take salary off of that team. And in exchange, that team is also going to give them draft picks and such. I think that's ultimately what's going to happen here. And then they're going to hit free agency hard and go after some big-name free agents that are available.
Right.
To fill out the top of their lineup.
Right.
So,
very good thinking.
And I think that strategy is going to give Vegas a pretty good team, ultimately. So, well, good. All right. Well, we've rambled on for a long, long time.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and wrap things up. We got time for we don't have time for the AHL Calder Cup playoffs, other than the fact, congratulations to the Grand Rapids Griffins for winning the Calder Cup.
Yes.
That was the ultimate conclusion of that playoff there. So let's close the show with our picks of the week.
Okay.
And you had one about Roman Josi and Mike Fisher.
Yes, I did. Here's two guys fighting for a Stanley Cup, and two very good players who are needed by their team. But I just really touching again that they took the time to visit a young cancer patient, and so I'll read this one real quick. Nashville players spend time with Trip Finney, 2, during break in Stanley Cup final against the Penguins. Nashville Predators center Mike Fisher and defenseman Roman Josi weren't too busy with their pursuit of the Stanley Cup to make a surprise visit to 2-year-old Trip Finney at his home in Murfreesboro, Tennessee on Friday. Finney is battling cancer and is in hospice care after recently being sent home from Vanderbilt Children's Hospital. Josi and Fisher posed for photographs with Finney and his 1-year-old brother, Keldon, and gave the family some autographed Predators paraphernalia, including some sticks. Me and Mike just wanted to be there for his family, Josi said Saturday. They're such a wonderful family, and for us it was just important to be there and make sure they know we're thinking about them. The Predators returned to Nashville following their 6-0 loss to the Penguins in Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Final in Pittsburgh. On Thursday, they trail 3-2 in the best-of-7 series, but with the teams having 2 days off before Game 6 at Bridgestone Arena on Sunday, Josi and Fisher were able to find some time to go see Finney and his family. Nashville photographer Stephanie Maloney told the Tennessean she sent Josi a Facebook message to see if he would be willing to visit Tripp, and he not only agreed but brought Fisher with him. Isn't that something? The captain of the team comes along. It's always tough, Fisher said. The little boy Tripp is a week apart from my son Isaiah, so if that doesn't hit the mark, we were happy to just be there. We didn't know it was going to be in the news or anything, but all we can do is help that family. We're praying for him and for recovery too. Finney's mother, Teresa, told the Tennessean they have become big Predators fans and attended 4 of their games with tickets donated to the Predators Cancer Fund by goaltender Pekka Rinne. So just a touching story. Many of the Nashville players touching that young fella, and certainly our prayers go out to him. I hope he makes a recovery. But once again, hockey players are the best. They really are for what they do in the community.
Yep. Wow. Yeah. Prayers go out to him for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my pick of the week is about our newest goaltender in Carolina, Scott Darling. He put out a great article this week in the Players Tribune, which was basically a goodbye message to the city of Chicago. And I don't know how much you know about Scott Darling's past, but his story is pretty remarkable on how far he's come. And I'll read the first part of the story. It's a pretty long story. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I encourage every one of you, if you want to continue to read this story. It's a great story about his struggles, and you can find it at the Players Tribune, which is we've mentioned this place before. It's a magazine or online for sure that is written by players or by athletes, so to speak. So here's the story, and it's penned by him, Scott Darling, with help from Todd Rosenberg. I'm sorry. No, he did the photo on the cover page of that article. It was Scott Darling who wrote the article anyway. On July 1st, 2011, I ended up in a room with tubes and wires hooked up all over my body. There was a little machine beeping that showed my vital signs. It was my first day at rehab. I had been drinking every single day for 8 months. I had just been released by a team in the Southern Pro Hockey League. I had no money, no hope. My dreams were effectively over. All I wanted at that point was to be a normal person again. I remember opening my eyes. The ceiling was blurry, my body ached, and I thought, how the F did this happen? On July 1st, 2014, exactly 3 years to the day after I went to rehab, I signed with the team I'd rooted for my entire life. My hometown team, the Chicago freaking Blackhawks. I remember thinking to myself once again, how the F did this happen? And then it goes on. He said, you should get used to that phrase because it's going to appear quite a bit in this story. For the past few months, I've been trying to figure out how to say goodbye to Chicago, and I just couldn't find the words. In writing this story, I got choked up 4 or 5 different times. Maybe that sounds ridiculous, but that's only if you don't know how low of a place I clawed my way up from. The thing about alcoholism is that you never think you have a problem. That's how it gets you, because it always starts small. For me, it started as a way to cope with social anxiety. Ever since I was a kid, I kind of lived inside my own brain. I was an introvert, and I was so worried about what everyone thought about me at all times. Like if I walked into a room of 100 people, I wanted to make sure all 100 people thought I was cool. So I was obsessed with being the best version of myself at all times. When I got to be 14, 15 years old, I was away from home playing junior hockey in different cities, meeting all the random people all the time. By the time I was 17, the whole routine became exhausting. I was wearing a mask all day. So when I got home, I just drink to shut off my brain and feel normal. I looked at it like it was my medicine. I wasn't like I was out going crazy and getting arrested. I was sitting at home watching movies and shutting off my brain. After my senior year, I was drafted by the Phoenix Coyotes, and I was on my way to play at the University of Maine. I never forget the day that my dad dropped me off at school at Maine. He was so proud of me that he gave me a big hug and handed me a check for $1,000. I mean, we were a blue-collar family from outside Chicago. My dad was a goalie in a beer league, and now I was going to Maine. It was insane. I was like, I did it. This is just the beginning. It's all right in front of me. I spent the next 2 years messing all that up. I tried to be a D1 hockey player and a student and a party animal. It was a bad mix. I would be late for meetings and practices because I was hungover. I look back on it now, and it seems totally absurd. I was mostly a six-pack a night. It was mostly a six-pack a night thing, but I just couldn't stop. I physically and emotionally couldn't stop drinking. If I wasn't drinking, I simply wasn't comfortable in my own skin. And then at the end of my sophomore year, I had a meeting with my coaches. They told me that I wasn't accountable and that they needed a starting goalie that they could trust. I was off the team. Being young and dumb, my attitude was, well, screw it. I'll just go to Coyotes camp and make the team. Yeah, no. Dumb plan. I remember my first day in the ice, I was so out of shape, and Shane Doan or someone came tearing down the right wing and ripped one top shelf, and I realized, okay, I see. I'm bad. I'm a bad goalie right now. I lasted maybe 5 days before Phoenix told me to beat it. I should have checked into rehab right then. Instead, I was on a plane the next day. Phoenix assigned me to their ECHL affiliate in literally the worst place on earth for me at that moment. Beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada.
Wow.
So, yeah, of course, the article goes on talking about, he was in the ECHL playing in Vegas. He continued to spiral downhill. They released him. He went to the Southern Pro Hockey League, basically begging for a job from a buddy of his who was on that team. And he was basically making, $200 a week playing in the Southern Pro Hockey League. And eventually he hit rock bottom, went to rehab, started working his way back up through the ranks, and now we know the rest of the story. He is now about to be the starting goaltender for our Carolina Hurricanes here in the local area.
Incredible.
So it's an interesting story. The article details every step of the way, what he was thinking as he was playing for these minor league teams, and he even had a visit from his dad, who visited him when he was playing in that Southern Pro Hockey League. And there's a quote. I'm trying to find it. Which basically is where he hit rock bottom. He was playing. Yeah, I'm trying to find it. But anyway, he was playing in a game. His dad came to see him. He played well that night, and his team won. His dad was there to see the game, and then they met in the parking lot after the game, and his dad basically said, you're not supposed to be here. You're playing in this $200 a week Southern Pro Hockey League, and and that kind of hit him pretty hard, and that basically sent him on his path back into recovering. So yeah, not a lot of people know the backstory with Scott Darling, and I remember him when he played at Maine, and I remember when he got cut from the team, and we didn't know. At Maine, they don't reveal the exact details. When they cut a player, they don't reveal why. Usually it has something to do with their grades. The grades weren't good. Obviously, in this case, since he just spilled it out in his article, it was due to his alcohol issues.
Very great story. God, that is really...
he comes back. He wins the Stanley Cup with his hometown team.
Gosh.
And
the rest, he's the starting goalie in the NHL now.
Yep. So, and he ends the article by basically saying, "Thank you for everything, Chicago. I had a great time, and wish you all the best."
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, I encourage everybody to read that full article. It's a very good read.
Excellent.
Especially if you have anybody that that has had trouble with alcohol in the past. It will really hit home.
Yeah.
So.
Very,
all right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap things up, because we've been yammering on for probably the longest show ever at this point. So, like I said at the beginning of the show, we don't have another show until the 27th, so we'll have a lot to catch up on then. I may pop on for short little bits here and there as big news comes out. Just me solo, just to deliver the news and then be done after that. But in the meantime, if you want to interact with the show, you can reach us on Twitter. I'm at Wayne Halley 9. Steve is at SBall504man. And you can reach us via our Facebook page at facebook.com/thehockeynuts. And you can email the show at feedback@thehockeynuts.com if you want to give us any feedback. So I'm going to keep all our other stuff short this week. So let's go ahead and wrap things up for this week. And until next time, we will see you later, Steve.
Have a good night, Wayne.
Yeah, you too. Whew, man, that was a long one.
Long podcast, but necessary because there's a lot of stuff.
Yep.
It really was. So, but we got it. We got it all together, so.
Yeah, you'll have to go on and read that whole article. I read the whole thing, and it was...
I'm kind of anxious to read it. I might read it this evening.
Yep.
I had no idea.
Yep.
I had no idea. But, Wayne, I tell you what, man, I got to go.
Yeah, me too.
I'm sitting here about to fall asleep. I can be up more.
Me too. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night because I was, cramming my research in. So.
Yeah, I hear you.
All right, let's go ahead and.
Yeah, have a good night.
Let's go ahead and end things then. Yep.
I'll be in touch with you throughout the next week.